Welcome to Anecdotes for Success with Matt and Paul. Storytelling is an art form, emphasizing the value and learning that is created through personal experience. Our purpose is to share these stories and experiences with the listener. Everyone has a powerful testimony. Let's use them to level up to our best life with truth, meaning, trade-offs, and perspective.
Big shout out to Isaac Mather for the new podcast intro. You can check Isaac's music out on all socials or directly at isaacmathermusic.com. Another week, another episode. Matt, before we get started, I was talking about you with somebody last night. Talk about you a lot. I don't know if that's good or bad, but we were talking about how much we were talking about a coffee shop this said person might help. But it's a popular coffee shop. Person might become part owner in it. The owner's looking to get out and just brew. It's successful, but he doesn't want to run operations. Wants to brew, if that makes sense. So, that stuff happens. And I'm like, you know what you should do? I said, get one of those claw machines in there and people take all their extra money and the kids will just go nuts on that. I go, my friend Matt has a claw machine in one of his subways, and I butchered how much you make out of that. But I go, what? And he listens to the podcast, so he's going to laugh when he hears this conversation. I go, whatever the number is, it's more than you think. What do you make off that thing?
Well, I'll tell you how much is spent on it in a year, and I get a percentage of it, and a percentage goes to the toy people who fill it, and you know what I mean. So money's getting split around, but I don't do anything. But I get a hefty percentage on it for doing nothing. It's pretty incredible. But the one you're referring to, that one does about 30,000 a year in sales, and it's and Paul, I'm in that store. I was in that store a lot the last couple weeks for a variety of reasons, and you just sit there, and it's like it's like a light moth to a flame kind of thing. Little kids especially, and then who comes running is generally mom. Mom's with them, and off they go, and they see that, and it's the lights, and what's even more amazing, Paul, is I think of those things. I think of a quarter. I think of 50 cents, because growing up, like at our age, we'd go to the arcade or whatever. It was a quarter, right, to play a game,
right.
and I know it's more like $1, and I've been to some of those adult, what are they called, Dave and Buster's and those kinds of things, which I love, by the way, which are a lot of fun. My wife and I like to do that. But anyway, I was just listening to it's like $5. They're like people. I think you can play for like $1 or something like that. I'd have to look, but people don't seem to play the dollar. They put in the $5 bill and they play 5 times or whatever it is. It's unbelievable. And Paul, number one, as you know, they're not winning most of the time. And when they do win, what are they winning? I mean, a little Nerf ball or a fluffy little toy, and obviously it's part of the it's for the kid, and they don't care as long as it's something. And it's gamey, and so people like gamey. And there's a variety of reasons people play it, but it's kind of a I mean, I look at it as like, man, I can't believe anyone's spending their money on that, but I guess people enjoy it, or they value that more than they value the money, or they would make the trade. That's just how everything works, right? And they value that experience or the chance to win more than they value the money it takes to participate. If they didn't, they wouldn't do it.
I feel like people just value they don't understand how much value they can get out of their money. They just love using it for this immediate gratification of consumption. I mean, we all have that in us. It's almost like it's in our DNA. I mean,
We
whether it's a boat or the
we
little
do, don't
machine,
we? We do.
yeah,
And I
or
think it's a discipline. There's a difference, and disciplining yourself out of that a little bit, because I think it's there. To your point, I think it exists. I think we all have that desire to go get it, buy it, grab it, reach it. It's funny. It reminds me. I had a meeting yesterday with a um one of my financial institutions. I have an advisor there, a financial advisor with some stuff I do with them. I was meeting with her yesterday, and we spent about an hour and a half talking about not just my wife and our situation with them, but um, I asked her, but you may find this. I'd love to know your opinion on this. I was asking her very pointed questions on these on investment stuff. Okay, um, what do how do you guys predict? Do you predict? You know, um, where do you just things I find interesting, things I find unbelievably natural questions if I'm going to invest money into something. And I said to her, I was asking her a ton of questions, Paul. And I said to her, like, I kind of then kind of shut up, which is hard for me, and said, what do like, okay. And she goes, you know what, Matt? I work with dozens and dozens and dozens of clients. You are one of just a couple who ask any questions. And I went, what are you talking about? What? She goes, most people just they don't want to know that they don't want to know how the sausage is made. They just go, I want to be able to retire when I'm 62. I want to, let's say finance my kids' weddings or college or, participate in some of those kind of big, broad type, or those are specific, but things. And she said they did, a lot of them don't even give detail. Like I want to retire when I'm 62 or 65 or whatever. Well, with how much money? I don't know. I mean, Paul, I about fell out of my chair. You work with people on these types of things.
yeah.
What's your experience like?
Well, it's funny. Same thing. I made the mistake one of the first times I had a client of saying, "Hey, I'm deciding if we're going to put it." I mean, again, I'm a middleman. I don't manage mutual funds, right? I don't manage IRAs. I find people that manage them and pick the fund based on how aggressive somebody wants to be, how much time they have. So I'm like, all right, we're going to put it in this combination or that combination. And the person looks at me and goes, just pick one. Like they get stressed out if I give them choices. Like they'd rather just, so you go through a suitability process where you understand how risk adverse they are and if there's a timeline, if they have an emergency fund, like how liquid they are, so you know what to do. But at the end of the day, they don't want to know. They don't ask any questions. They just do it. It's
Um,
kind of
um,
it's kind of weird. Now, I'm glad they're doing it because when I go on Twitter, a lot of financial money Twitter people are like, you don't need an advisor. You don't need to pay fees. It's ridiculous. Open up your own brokerage account, do your stuff. But at the end of the day, people don't want to be bothered with it, right?
sure, right.
Like I make the analogy, I could make my own coffee at home, but I don't. I walk down to Burned Area every day, buy my coffee, I outsource it. I don't want to be bothered with the mess in my house,
Yeah, yeah.
even if it's a Keurig. So people are the same thing. Like, all right, they're paying fees to people, but they're not bothered with it. They don't want to know how the sausage is made. So the trick, what I'm learning is how do you even get people to want to do that, at least understand they need the sausage. They need to invest. Most people, I think 50%
Uh,
of America, 50% of America doesn't really have any type of investment
well,
towards retirement.
I almost thought I heard on a podcast recently it was even almost like 60%. I don't know. I don't
No,
know.
it probably is. I don't
You're
want to know
you're
that.
your point is even, your point is still your point though. It's a well, I was talking to two of your students yesterday, and we got talking about investing a little bit, and we had some very fun conversations about that amongst some many other things, business related, college, investing, what kind of, business, real estate, just, traditional, what I consider traditional investing, like what we're talking about. I'm never quite sure what the right term is for that because there's so many different
Right.
options.
Right.
Um, but in all those types of things. But um, you know, it was funny because I was asking them what their goals are. And they were kind of like, well, I just want to get started in something. I said, look, you've got to start with an aim in mind. You have to have a goal in mind. If you don't have anywhere to aim, a goal, like you're just floundering. You're just willy-nilly going all over. I said, there's no reason you can't aim at something and a few steps into it go, hey, this isn't for me. And then you move and you pivot or whatever the term we want to use is, but you always got to have something to aim at, or you won't. Paul, why invest if I don't know what I want to do, right? Why would
Right.
I invest in my future if I don't even know if I've never given any thought? My point is, it's easy not to when I don't want to be bothered with the future, right? I want to bury my head in the sand. I want to not think about those things. A $7 Starbucks doesn't seem like a big deal to me when I have $7 in my account if I don't have a future I'm aiming for, right? If I have a future I'm aiming for and it requires investment, well, $7 Starbucks looks very different all of a sudden.
So couple things I want to
This
get
was
back.
made at home, but this was made at home.
I know. I felt guilty. I saw you drinking that. So when you ask people don't know how much money they need, right? One of the basic things I do is I ask them what their fin is. Nobody knows what that means. It's just financial independence number. So how
Okay.
much money do you need to never work again? And
Mm,
the general way to go about it, generally speaking, is you take how much your household income is now, right?
okay.
If you're 30, they say they want to retire at 62, and I'm like, well, why not 55? Why not 65? It's just a formula. Let's see how it works. But let's
Got
just
it.
go with 62 because a lot of people say that. So you multiply what your household income is by 3% because that's how much you should be making at 62. And you're probably living off of that, right? Like that salary when you retire.
Wait, why?
3% a year.
Say, but let me ask you back up. You multiply your current income times
Right? 3% a year. You use a financial
3% a
calculator.
year as
Yeah.
an
That,
inflation marker.
Yep.
Okay,
Again, that fluctuates, but that's generally what it is.
general.
So now,
Yep, I'm with
so
you.
now
I'm
you're
with you.
62 years old and your household income is set amount, right?
Yep.
Now, how long are you going to live to? It's
Yep.
common. We say it's common if it's 62, we'd say 92. I mean,
Okay. Yep.
again,
Plan for
just a
it.
number. Yeah.
Plan for it.
So,
Yep.
so now you take that number at 62 and you multiply that by 10.
Okay.
So if it's 250,000 at 62, you need 2.5 million invested and saved,
I see.
ready to roll at 62. So then they're like,
In
holy
order,
cow.
Paul, sorry to interrupt, but I'm curious.
Yeah,
In order to live those next 30 years on the same, as I said, your students yesterday, it isn't about income. It's not about a dollar amount. It's about buying power, right? That's why
right,
inflation.
right. Yeah, yep,
Have the same buying power for those next 30 years. In this scenario, you would need
yep.
2.5 million. And then when that 30 years is up, are you out of money?
But
In theory, in theory,
in in
in
theory,
theory.
but
Yeah.
it gets them started. Now, you'll probably have less expenses. I mean, like if you're at 32 and have two young kids, obviously they're going to be gone. Uh, and then there's other buckets we have, like how much do you have now? Oh, well, we have 50,000 saved so far. All right, well, let's continue. How much do you put in a month? Oh, $50. All right, well, let's continue that. Wow, you're way off. And let's do it at 6%, 9%, 12%, and see how much you'd have to put in each month to get to that point. And
Huh.
it's great. If you're 32, you can still right the ship, right?
Yep.
If
Yep. Yep.
I had a client, if they're 55 and they're looking at 62, there's only so much you can do. And part of it's going to be we have to be aggressive because the alternative, you're just going to have to keep working. Now, 62, you can collect Social Security. So the time held the question becomes, do you take it or wait? I'm personally a take it, because you never know how long you're going to live for. Take it at 62. If you're relying on just a certain amount of income, maybe you try to wait for the higher amount as you get older. But that's that when people don't know how much they need to live when they retire, that's kind of the general formula, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I want to repeat it because I think it's worth repeating. So let's use some real numbers here.
I'll send you a video of a mentor of mine. They call it the one liner. Like, I can draw this on a piece of paper for a client. Like, I
Mhm.
draw a diagonal line to 62, and I put a dotted line out till 90. Then we get your fin, and then we put what are you investing in now? What do we have to do? And then go
Right.
from there.
I think to me anyway, and you tell me if I'm right here or wrong here. The thing that people would have a difficult time understanding, let's say they're 42, all right, and they're going to retire at 62 and live till 92. Okay, we'll use that formula. If they're making, I'll just use $75,000 as the number. If they're
Right.
making $75,000 today at 42, with that 3% every year, that 75,000 to 62 is not going to be 75,000 anymore. It's going to be,
Right.
I don't know, 100. I wish I had a calculator to figure that. And then they got to see what, because you said 250, right? You're like,
Well,
let's say
yeah.
250. No. But my point is, I bet you most people said, oh, geez, for 250, I don't need 250. You might in 50 years,
Right.
right? And it was just what it reminded me of yesterday. I was talking to your students, and one of them said, um, what how do you put it? Uh, Essentially, what he was saying was, well, if I do this, oh, he was telling me he wanted to put some money into a IRA right at 18, and it wasn't a large amount of money, but it was some money. And then he wanted to. I said, well, why do you want to do that? He goes, well, I want to grow it because at a certain time, if I have that and I put a little over time, when I'm 62 or whatever, I'll have $1 million or whatever. And two things. Number one, I said, well, you're telling me your other goals. If you have the other goals you're talking about, you'd be better off taking this few $1,000s and investing in these other goals because you'll double and triple that money in a month. I could triple it in 10 days if in some ways I easily. It was just a few grand. It wasn't like a lot of money,
Right.
but you can use that much better in the short term if you have these other goals. But I know what you're talking about here, but I would advise you not to do that if you're trying to accomplish these other goals because you need an injection of cash to accomplish these other goals. This is just going to sit here forever. You're never going to get that kind of return in any kind of investment. So that was one part of the discussion. Not that I was discouraging anyone not to do that, but if you tell me you have these other goals, they don't always align, at least in the short term. But where I said, well, what did you figure you'd have, in what he's like 17, I think he said. What would you have at 62? He said like $1 million or something like that, or 1.4 or something like that. I said, that's 40 for him. That was like 45 years away or something. I said, have you asked the question I go, $1.4 million seems like a ton of money right now. What is $1.4 million buying power in today's money? He's like, well, what do you mean? I go, what is that in today's money? That's the question that needs to be asked. And I said, I don't care who you're talking to. If you're ever talking to any investment people, and I said, whether it's Mr. Richmond, whether it's
Right.
me, whether it's anybody, if you hear that in 40 years, it's going to be worth this or 50 or 20 or whatever, you should raise your hand. So be prepared in case it happens in class. You should
Yeah.
raise immediately and go, what's that mean in today's money? Because you don't have the right perspective of it. So I think everyone should do that. It's very important to do.
It's funny because I know where they're getting this from. We did a lesson the other day. There's an app called Buy, Sell, Hold. It's a green app and it has a B, a dollar sign, and an H. And I was showing them if you start with $5 a day, there's different scenarios, but $5 a day is $150 a month, right?
Yeah.
And the one scenario is if you start now and it was 32 years, they'd have $1.125 million. So that's what they're thinking about,
Oh, okay, okay.
which is great. I also showed them a scenario. If they wait till they're 28 to start doing the $5 a day, they end up with $820,000.
Oh,
But
yep.
but if they start today and stop in 10 years, they'll have 845,000. They'll have more money if they invest the next 10 years and stop. Because
Right, right, right.
what's everybody's, because they have time on their side. Everybody, I'll wait till I get my real job. I'll
Sure.
wait till I pay my house off and my loan. So we were doing different scenarios, but what they missed out on, this is why this is neat, that I'm glad they retained enough to have that conversation with you. But I don't want them to think they have this pot of money for when they're 62. I want them to have the freedom when they're 40 to change careers or buy that investment property, or they have this pot of cash that's sitting there. Because I said, you're seniors in high school and you're sick of school right now. So why do
Yeah.
you think in 12 years you're not going to be sick of your job or your career? And I hope you're not.
Right.
But
Of
if
course not. None of us
and
want that. Right.
and a lot of them open brokerage accounts, which is great. And I said, doesn't have to, the IRAs and the 401ks, yeah, that's great. They have tax breaks for you. But you have to wait till you're 59. Like
Yeah.
just to put it in a mutual fund or an index fund, put it in an ETF, put it in Spider, put it in Invesco. You can take that out whenever you want and just pay
Mm.
capital gains tax on it. So that's where I'm trying to get them to invest. And then if it's $5 a day or $10 a day, treat it as an expense, and then
Yeah.
go take your other cash and do the things you're talking about. Does that
Sure.
does that does that make sense?
It does, because I'm always afraid talking to these younger kids. They tell me, your kids are different because they've talked to
Right.
so many different people out in the real world now. They have a different perspective, and I just love it. It's just so refreshing for
By
them.
the way, we're in an hour, we're going to see Craig Southard today.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool. Watch out for
And
accents, flying accents.
well, and it's funny because he's got his 4 different businesses, and I go, hey, I'm going to give you the scenario. It's a guy that went to college, had a career, and now he does something 180 degrees different. And they're
Yeah.
like, why do you always do that? I'm like, well, why do you think I always do that? Like, and his journey, he doesn't trade any part of what he did before that. But that's why I don't ask that question anymore. Would you do anything different? I think it's important to embrace what you did in the past, and that's who you are today, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So,
I agree.
so he was the engineer and had his job and then
Yeah.
started a company and this and that, but all his skill sets and his thinking. So, anyways, go on.
Yeah, yeah,
I
whatever.
interjected.
Your students have a different perspective and way of viewing the world at 17, 18 in their futures, and the way most students don't. And that's why I love what you do so much, and like to be a part of it to whatever degree I can be. But so with different questions and thoughts than most. They come with different questions and thoughts at 17 and 18 than most adults do at 57 and 58. And it's true because they've been exposed to things, and whether it's Craig, there's a bunch of people that they get to get exposed to. So that's great. But what the challenge anyone would have, is when they're seeing that they want a future of freedom, like we're kind of referring to, or you're referring to, and having options. And like I always say, guys, you want choices in life. You don't want to be pigeonholed and into stuck in a scenario. And we were talking about that a lot. But you want choices in life. If you take all your money and invest it into IRAs, you don't have any choice. You might have the pot of gold, if you will, at the end of the rainbow, but you're still going to be 62 at that end of the rainbow, or whatever the age is. But at 50 or at 18, that's 40, 44 years away or whatever. You've limited your choices.
Yep.
You're telling me you want to buy investment properties and you want to start your own business. You need cash in most cases to do that. So if your plan is to take all a bunch of chunks of money, which is a lot to you, then you aren't building the capital you need to invest in these other things that you claim you want to do because you want choices and you want to build a dream and you want financial freedom, you want life freedom. You can't have both things. You could argue you could put some over here in your IRA and some and invest and then do some over here. Of course you could. But what's the trade-off? If you've got 50, 20, 10, 20, 30 grand sitting over here in your IRA, wonderful. How does that help you buy that zero turn that you need to grow your lawn mowing business?
Right.
Or the next income producing asset or whatever it is. So yes, you can do both, but it will slow down your ability to go quicker and build your other businesses. You can't. We talked about it ad nauseum yesterday. Everything's a trade. You can have both, but they come at a cost. And I'm always, I was like, yeah, and investing's my favorite because you go, if you want high growth and lots of liquidity, you're gonna take lots of risk. If you want safety, low risk, you're gonna have low growth. Like and then there's some everything in between. And that is to me a great example of what life is like. You want this, it comes at this cost. You want that, it comes at that cost. There are no free rides. There are no free lunches. There are only trade-offs. And investing is a great example of that. So I wasn't telling him what he should or shouldn't do. I never do that. I just say, you're telling me you want this, then if you do that, this is what the outcome is going to be.
Right. Well, what I battle is obviously these are honor students and there's a lot of pressure to go to college.
Oh, yeah. Both of them were like, I'm not sure I'm going.
And
I was like, oh God, I want to hear it.
Well, but again, there's nothing absolute. Like I'm saying, don't go to the private university and end up $300,000 in debt. They have almost 36 college credits when they graduate my program in high school. Go to the community college and bang that out and keep your options open. Take online options. And while they're in college, that's why I'm always trying to encourage them to invest in that brokerage account, because if you just keep it in a savings account, and you could even do, there's some online savings accounts where you can get almost 5% interest now. So that's pretty good trade-off and super liquid. But
that's awesome.
mutual funds are liquid. And if you wait 4, 5, 6 years to need the money, you're going to make money.
You're right. That's where you want it.
I don't want them doing nothing, Right. I'm not certainly convinced with this newer generation they have to rely on, put your money in an IRA and a Roth IRA and get all those tax benefits. And then when you're 59 and a half, you can use it. Right. You can use it for a first-time home purchase or to pay off some debt. Right. All right, great. Why don't I just build wealth my own way and suffer the tax consequences? But at least I'm paying money off money. I'm paying taxes on money I've made. It's not like a punishment, right?
Right. It's income.
So that's the stuff we try to explore, but that's interesting. I don't think college is a waste of time. I just ask kids, why are you just jumping into it? That's all I ask them.
Paul, one student I spoke to was talking about being a therapist, a physical therapist. Okay, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, and he's weighing the college decision. It's clear you guys have those discussions in class, which I think is just outstanding, and he said, but I want to go to a junior college or a community college. And I said, I think that's absolutely a smart, great thing to do.
Right.
I said, if that's because he's like, I'm not sure I want to go at all. I go, well, the question is, do you want to be that physical therapist? Because if you do, you have to go. There's no way around it. That's one of those areas. It's straightforward. If you're going to be a physical therapist, I think most of them now have to get a doctorate even. So I said, look, there's programs out there. My wife is an occupational therapist. She was in a 5-year program. I assume that it's the same kind of programs out there. If I were you, and you tell me what you think about this, if I were you, I would go to whatever college I thought I was going to go to finish up, to get in that long-term doctorate program. I would talk to the counselor or whoever, and I would say, look, this is a 5-year program. I need to be out in 4, including 2 in a community college. What's the plan? Like, let's lay out a plan. If that means I got to take 18, 21 credits, the first couple of years or the last couple of years, if I have to go summers, if I'm going in it, like you said, with 36 credits because of your program and New Visions and that kind of thing, like lay out the program because you've got a few things. Number one, you're going to come out with a bunch of debt, but you can reduce that by spending less time there
Yeah.
and going to community college. And number two, that 4 years, you're not going to get to work it all. So you also have an opportunity cost, right? It's not just
Yep.
the loan debt. It's the fact that you haven't been making any money for 4 years, too. And now, and that's a cost. You can poo-poo it all you want, but it is. So, like, am I on the right page with that?
You are. And what kids don't realize is you can take classes all year at a college. They have
Correct.
summer terms, but
Correct.
we're so conditioned. No, I'm going to go home in the summer.
It's my break, right?
Like literally May through August.
Yeah.
Like I get it if you're making money, but most of them are making money and
No.
spending it,
Yeah. Right.
But
Exactly.
but no, that's great stuff. And I say if you're going to stay there 5 years, like here I piggyback what you're saying, double major
Yeah.
because you already have all these
Yeah.
credits. So
Yeah.
so
That makes
either
sense.
go for less time
Yeah.
or go the amount of time they want you to, but get more for it, if that
Got it.
makes sense.
Got it. Yeah. No, I
Like
hadn't thought of that. That makes
like
sense.
my older daughter with all her credits, and she took some summer classes while playing softball and doing all that stuff. She got her master's in counseling, which you need to be a school counselor. She did the 5 year program in 4 years because of the Head Start. Allie took 4 years and got her MBA within the 4 years because of the head. Like neither
Yep.
of them stayed a fifth year.
Yep. Yep.
Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no point in it. Let's have the experience, get what you need, and get out.
Get
Right.
out. Yep. Yep.
Uh, I take it as far if you're not going to be making money for 3, 4, 5 years, why not work your ass off for a year or two after high school, invest that money, now go to school because
Sure. Sure.
those 4 years won't hurt you as much if you already have put money in something. If
Yeah.
you like that example I gave
Yeah.
you,
Yes. Yes.
if you
To let
wait
it
five
go.
years to start, if you wait 5 years to start, you're going to have to put 3 times as much money in to make the same amount of money. So,
That's
so
that is an incredible point.
why
That
do
is
we have to
really
go right after high school to college?
boy, Paul. And then you just so your point you're making is so go work for 2 years, let's say.
Well, even 1 year. The
Oh,
example I
oh,
use: work for 1 year, piggy bank 10 grand, invest it, and then leave that alone and just go live your life, and then revisit that at 30 or 40 or whenever you want it. That's just
well,
like one quick example.
Paul, why couldn't you bank 20 grand?
Well,
And
you can
no,
probably,
I know, but I mean, what does that look
yeah.
like if you just let that alone? I mean, I'd never given that a thought. Just
And
doing that way, just flipping it, right? And doing a year,
yeah,
we'll take 15, we'll split the difference, 15 grand, which by the way would be so easy to make and put away.
yeah.
Just working 40 hours a week. I'd work
Live at
60,
home,
but
live at home.
exactly. Then just leave that 15, you're saying, go to school the next 4 years, and then go into the workforce and do your thing. And now you got that 15 that you got a 5 year head start on, just sitting there. And what that looks like over the course of 30 years or 35 years, because you started 5 years earlier, is huge. Is that what your point is?
Yeah, like I joked about it with our daughters because there's pressures. They both played college softball. That what if you waited a year? You can still come in as a freshman a year later. Like I'm sure the
Yeah.
coach would still have you a year later, but it's just not what you do. So I'm not trying to sound hypocritical or anything, and everybody's past their past, but
Yeah.
it's one option. Like they were getting some money in college. At the end of the day, you want to limit your debt when you get out of this experience. And there's just lots of ways to do it nowadays. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and there's some options out there but the problem is the conversations are few and far between. It's still there's more than ever before, I would say, but and
Yeah.
thankfully so. But there's still that pressure to do it the traditional way. But man, I'd never thought that one through. I'm gonna run some numbers on that and see what that would look like. I'm interested to see that.
We do that in class a lot. We run so many numbers, I forget how that one turns out. I mean, it depends what it's in,
Of course. Yeah. But I just want a sense of it.
we do it where, all right, put it in a Roth IRA and just leave it till you're 59 and a half. That's one scenario.
Okay.
put it in a mutual fund or put it in an index fund and then revisit it every 5 years, and you'll have a chunk of change at some point where maybe when you're 32 you want to pivot or take that chance. Or I even use the scenario, hell, maybe you want a boat at that point. Like, I'm not saying it always has to be to build more money,
Right.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
you can take so few steps when you're younger to really live your best life.
Yeah. Yeah. Man.
I just and I tell people I tell the kids all the time, I'll ask them, why do you want $1 million? Well,
Right. Right.
so I don't have to work anymore. I go, does it ever dawn on you that most of the people that have that money are still working? Why is that? It's because they've got a process and they've got meaning and they love what they do. And it's just they know there's more to life than just sitting around and not working. But the people that don't have money want money to stop working.
Right.
And the people that have money don't stop working. I'm like, there's something to that.
There's something there. Right. Exactly.
Last thing I do, I think I told you this before. We just talked about the other day. Minimum wage is what, 14.40 or $15 in New York.
Something like that.
So we did 14.40 or whatever the
Okay.
kids told me. I went back to 1990 when I think it was 3.85 an hour.
Okay.
And the kids are like, how'd you survive? But I used an inflation calculator.
Yeah.
14.40 today is like $6.05 back in 1995. So
Okay.
I made half of what they're making today.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's impossible. Everything's so expensive. I don't have enough money. And I said, well, it took them a minute, but they realized they have phones.
Phones.
They have streaming subscriptions. They order on Amazon. It's not enough to have like a beater car. They have a brand new car. So they just buy more.
Right.
And some of it's society, because there's stuff we could like. I was excited to go to Burger King, get the 2 burgers and 2 fries and a drink for $2. And that was like 40 minutes of work.
Well,
So consumption is the biggest problem,
Paul, I yelled
even
at both.
before investing, but that's a whole nother topic.
I yelled at both those students yesterday. Yelled, I'm kidding, but
Right.
I said one of them said something about getting DoorDash or Uber Eats or whatever. I go, are you telling me you pay for that? And they're like, well, yeah, I have to because of, there's always a reason. There's always an excuse, right?
Right.
I go, I'm going to make the assumption I make more money than both you guys. I've never, ever ordered one of those things. I'm like, now could I make? I go, there's no excuse for you doing that. Now, could I make the argument, that I'm at my desk landing a big deal that's going to make me 50 grand and I haven't eaten lunch? Is it worth the $4 or $5 or whatever Uber brought in? 100%. Could I justify that? Yeah, absolutely. Just like, then I followed up and said, there's people who buy private jets, and I could justify that deal for them as well. If they're flying to China or God knows where to make $1 billion deals, yeah, having a private jet is a good expense. It's an investment. It wouldn't be for me, but there's most of these people, they're sitting at home playing video games, and they don't want to. I have an employee I talked to 2 days ago, and that employee was telling me that he was waiting for his paycheck because he's only got $50. And this is an adult, by the way.
Right.
And then within 20 minutes, we're having another conversation, and he was telling me how he has so many Uber or DoorDash, one of the two, bags stacked up in his room next to his video game system. And he's like, I got so many bags, it's terrible. And I said, well, what? You order that? You use that? And he's like, yeah. And I go, 20 minutes ago, you were telling me how you didn't have any money. I go, that's where all your money's going. Yeah, but I need to because, and I'm like, no, you don't. Not like, no, you don't.
Think how his life would change if for the next 2 years, instead of DoorDash, he invests that.
I said,
or just puts it in a savings account for crying out loud.
Do yourself a huge favor and look on your statement how much money you're spending a month on that, and then multiply it by 12 and get a sense of what it costs you for a year to have that. And then what that could look like if you just set that money aside and then just invested it. And you never would have to touch it. I mean, he's a good guy. I like the guy a lot. He's never got. He doesn't want to own his own business, and that's fine. He doesn't.
He's never going to have any money, is what we are saying,
Yep.
because that's the why I feel like I outdid myself with the minimum wage example, because technically people are making twice as much as I made,
I see.
but
I see.
they're buying more stuff,
Yep.
and it's all justifiable. Now, I'm not saying don't have a phone, because you also have to buy certain things to keep, not to keep up in society, but like a phone can be a very valuable tool as well.
Very, very much so. Yep.
But video games, besides Atari, not valuable. Streaming, watching Netflix all day. Like, you pick your poison, and I think we talk about it all the time. Living up to your best life doesn't mean having so much passive income you never have to work again. It might be.
Right.
But I mean,
Doesn't
I
have
think
to.
it
Yeah.
just I think it just means developing a plan where you get to do what you want to do with some degree of freedom,
Yeah. Some degree.
right?
Correct. Yes.
And
Some degree.
the degree of freedom's up to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to go live with this now. I haven't talked to you about it yet, but I know one of our plans next year is to do more with the subscription side of this podcast, right?
Yeah.
And we should toy around with it. I'm saying it live because it always holds us more accountable. I think we should call it like the Level Up Academy, and we put a lot of stuff in there that helps people maybe stop buying. Not helps people, but
Awareness.
encourages people or builds awareness that,
Yeah.
wow, my money's going to DoorDash. How do I stop that? Well, you
Yeah.
know how to stop it, but what do I do with it?
Right.
Oh,
Right.
maybe myself. Oh, I'll start making my own coffee instead of outsourcing it like Matt does,
Yeah.
Or, gosh, should I go to college? Well, here's some statistics on this. You make your own
Yeah.
decision. But leveling up to your best life is about the choices you make, not the choices Matt Huffnagel makes or Paul Richmond makes, right?
Exactly. Yes. It's
And
all
I know
choices.
we just talked last week when I took my class to Seth's place about some of the new stuff I've been doing, and it's completely because of hanging out with people like you and Seth and Craig Southern, and I had a happy life before that, but I'm just leveling it up even more now because it's fun. And you text me, you always text me your random words of wisdom, usually on a Sunday as I'm walking. I'm like, great, now I got to think. I was just out about how much you feel it's so important to be around the people that you want to be like.
Yeah.
We can end with that. Explain that for a minute, and then we'll.
Yeah, I've seen more than one study that in one of the recent ones suggests. I just shared it with my daughter and son-in-law the other day as well. That our income, your income, my income, whoever is going to be statistically within 15% of the average income of the 10 people you spend the most time with. So let's say the 10 people you spend the most time with, their average income, somebody's making 20 grand a year and someone's making, 300,000 a year. And then all in between, whatever those averages are, and let's say it's 100 just for easy math, your income is going to be 85 to 100, roughly 85 to $115,000 a year. That's I think this was a Harvard study actually, that came out and showed that, and it's not the first one I've read by any means. I've seen some different variations on that, but the point is always the same. You are the people you hang out with. You are going to be
Yep.
like, in many ways, not the least of which is income level, the people you hang out with. So, and that shouldn't surprise you when you start thinking about it. If I wanted to be a great artist, I should hang out with great artists, right? And
Yep.
if I, whatever it is you decide you value and want to be, but the worst part is if I hang out with people who aren't interested in doing anything productive, right? Art or growing their wealth or teaching but they want to do drugs and drink and waste their time, in a variety of wasteful manners. That's who you're going to become too. And that should be the real lesson there. It's not, ooh, I can make more money. It's you are the people you hang out with. And I've been saying that for years because of things I've read. And this is just another, tool in the tool belt of a study showing it's true. It's true.
Well, I think that's the whole point of this podcast and why we bring people together. It's to listen to their stories, and it's all anecdotal because there's no technically scientific system, but there's the same things in common with everybody's success story, right?
Yeah, there are, and I think we could very easily identify several strategies that if you do these with discipline over time, you will succeed to a certain level. What that number is, that there's going to be variables in there. There's going to be all those things, but if you make these choices, you will end up kind of in this category here, this positive area that you want to be in.
Right. And that's why we'll focus some more on the subscription side of that too, because it's not expensive, but you got to have a little skin in the game and want to change.
In everything. Yep.
And then we can showcase stuff we do, and most importantly, stuff other people do. And again, leveling up is a definition on you or you or me or the other person.
Yep.
We're not saying, oh, get to here in 30
never,
days.
Never. That's never been the message. I hope it's never been perceived that way,
No, not with us. But
yeah.
All right. I think we should name this episode like All Over the Place with Matt and Paul.
I was gonna say this did not go how but this is more like our normal conversation, right?
I know.
This was we'll discuss that other topic too. I think that's important down the line, but obviously we hijacked it elsewhere today, but it was fun.
When we started with the claw machine or whatever that was, I knew right then that
that's right.
This wasn't happening. So maybe we'll do it next week. All right, man. Have a great week.
You too. See ya.